Hello, I'm John Beattie. Welcome to Cask to Glass, the whisky podcast where I explore the heritage and flavour of Scotland's national drink and the world's favourite spirit. Now, in this episode, I speak to Alasdair of Raasay Distillery. It's one of our most beautiful islands, and it is a young distillery. Alasdair, thank you so much for talking to us today. Before we get going, how do you take your whiskey?
To be honest, I take it as a long drink. I would drink whiskey and ginger ale as a kind of preferred drink. Having said that, I do like it neat with ice and cocktails. But generally I would have it as a long drink.
And if you were to pick one whiskey to have, what would it be?
There's two for me depending on mood. So if I was kind of relaxing, it'd be a Balvenie. If I was more kind of going out, it'd be Caol Ila.
Oh, an Islay one.
Yeah.
Tell me about Raasay. First of all, for people watching, and listening, I was on Raasay the other day. Just explain to folk where it is.
The Isle of Raasay is a very small island in the Inner Hebrides, just off the east coast of Skye, so northwest Scotland. It's between Skye and Applecross in the mainland. It's small, 40 miles long, 3 miles wide, about the same size and shape as Manhattan, but the 2011 census was 161 people lived on Raasay, so slightly different.
Really? Because it is beautiful, and again, if people haven't tried it, just jumping on the ferry, this wee ferry, roll-on, roll-off ferry, and you're across and you've got your lovely distillery just as you come out off the ferry up on the right, and then there's Raasay House. And then there's lovely walks around it. Where did you get the idea from to have a distillery?
The original idea for having a distillery actually came from, for me anyway, came from my family heritage. So my great grandfather was a whiskey blender in Coldstream, Scottish Bordeaux, so complete opposite corner of Scotland from Raasay. And that company started in 1820, so that's kind of my connection to whiskey, and I started in 2009 when I inherited my great grandfather's cellar book. So that's what that looks like, and it's got all the recipes from 1899 to 1916 in the back of the book here. So in 2009, I decided to recreate one of those whiskies from the book, which was called the Tweed Ale, which is that. That's my great grandfather in the bottle. So that's how I started in whiskey. That was 2009, 2010. And after a few years of doing that, things got really tight in the industry. So it was really difficult. I was buying fully matured whiskey, casks of fully matured whiskies, 9 whiskies in a blend, 1 grain, Lowland Highlands, Speyside Islay malt, and then blending it together. It became really hard to do that. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to, scale this in any way unless I get some sort of investment. Looked at the numbers for that, thought, goodness, you could build a small distillery for that amount of money, and then that was kind of my light bulb moment. So wrote a plan for a Bordeaux distillery, but then, as I say, needed to raise investment. And cutting a very long story short, that's how I met Bill Dobbie. So Bill Dobbie's my fellow co-founder and investor, chairman in R&B Distillers, and Bill, when I first spoke to him, said, well, actually, I'm thinking about Raasay. I went, okay. So I went up to Raasay with Bill in May 2014 and stood outside what was then a disused hotel. Looked at that view that you mentioned. Well, went over on the ferry, 25-minute crossing, stood outside the distillery and thought, actually, this is, Bill's right, this is the place to build a distillery, and that's how it all came about.
Again, before we get to that book of yours that you just showed me, it looks like a book from the, 1800s?
Yeah, so it's actually, the front of the book here is a sales ledger for 1881.
Wow.
So it's all the sales, and there's a page in here, I think it's February, that's my great-great-grandfather buying beer. There you go, 12th of February 1881. James Day, the Lees, so he was the head groom at the Lees estate. That's where the name Day comes from, to like a daily servant. So James Day, head groom, in Jane A. Davidson's, spending 14 shillings, which, as I say, was probably beer for the big house. So that's my first written connection to whiskey.
And you said there was a recipe in there
Yeah,
for whiskey.
There's several recipes for the blends in here. So that one there is actually the 1916 Tweedale. So that's the Tweedale recipe in the book. But all of this goes all the way back to 1899, and it's got all of the distilleries, the quantities. It's got a bit of Scotch whisky history in there as well, because as soon as you get to 1914, that's when they start recording the ages. So by this point, they've got to record the year of distillation. So before that, you didn't have to. That's when the minimum age thing came into Scotch whisky. So it's a nice thing to have.
That's a great story, and even lovelier. You know, I'm talking to you on VE Day, and you know, our world is full of history, and that's a lovely piece of history to have.
Yeah. So my great grandfather Richard Day, he was First World War. He was stationed in Cairo. And my grandfather in the Second World War was stationed in the same barracks in Cairo. Some weird coincidence.
Wow. I love telling the amazing story of Scotland's whisky industry and sharing some positivity about one of the incredible things this country has given the world. Now, if you want to share some positivity too, leave us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to the podcast. It takes you 10 seconds and will help Cask to Glass reach a much, much wider audience. So you get the idea to set up a distillery on Raasay. It's a disused hotel, because Raasay House is a kind of, they've gone up market to make it, you know, some big ticket. I think they saw, was it Sachin Tendulkar? There was a very famous Indian batsman they've got on the wall as having stayed there. I might be wrong with the name. And my daughters went up there on camp.
Yeah.
But then, just to explain your distillery, it's beautiful. It's modern, sleek, glass tourism. We were there. Quite a few American tourists were there. Yep. Just describe the distillery.
Yeah. So the centre of the distillery, Bordeaux House, that's a Georgian building. So that was built. So Raasay House that you mentioned, it's a hotel, outdoor centre. The middle of that at the back is a Jacobean house, and then it's all been extended over time. The latter bits are Georgian, and so Bordeaux House was the estate manager's house for the estate for Clan MacLeod, and you probably saw the building in between. That's the stables and with milk parlour. Yeah, I used to have a lovely big tower, clock tower on it, and then there's Bordeaux House. So that's the original building. So we refurbished that, we stripped it back. That's where the 6 ensuite bedrooms are currently, and the residence lounge. And then on the other side, you've got this kind of newer bit that's the gathering room, that's the restaurant now. And then to the left is the gold roof, that's the kind of shop and the bar, and where the tour starts, tasting room. And then the sleek black building that you're talking about is the actual distillery itself. So, you know, we designed the process first. We designed the whiskey we wanted to make, designed a process to make it, and then gave that design to the architect who put the building round the process.
There was a stag weekend there when I was there. They were having a laugh. Tell me about the whiskey you try to make.
So what we want to do, so we refer to ourselves as the first legal distillery on the Isle of Raasay. So there is a history of distilling on Raasay. There are some places you can go to the island where you would find these small illicit stills. So we have a distiller's license, they didn't, but that was the kind of history of Scotland, generally speaking, in rural Scotland. So we wanted to make a Hebridean whisky. So they then had to, well, what is a Hebridean whisky? And this was in 2015 when we were kind of doing all this design and thinking about what we were going to make. And at the time you had Jura, Tobermory, Talisker. That was kind of your Hebridean. So Isla is obviously a Hebridean island, but it's also a region in its own right, and they're renowned for heavily peated whiskies. Not all island whiskies are heavily peated, but that's the kind of style people think of when you say Isla. So Hebridean, we're looking at that, and we thought, well, lightly peated, so not unpeated, not heavily peated, but somewhere in the middle. So I think you need rugged windswept island off an island. You need that kind of peaty characteristic, and then we thought, well, what else? And if you think about single malt in Scotland, it tends to be, when you talk about fruit, it tends to be apples, pears, maybe banana, maybe some exotic fruit, but very rarely do you get dark fruits. And around that time, there's a lot of people talking about Bowmore and Islay and how it used to have this really dark fruit character, and they changed some things in production and it went away, and then they worked really hard to get that dark fruit back. So I thought, well, that would be a good thing. So in very broad terms, we would refer to it as lightly peated with dark fruit.
We went there with friends, and we were in the bar, and we just had a wee whiskey, me and Angus, who's from Skye. So he's a kind of traitor going to Raasay. But we had one, it had been in a couple of casks. The second cask was sherry.
Yep.
But the first one had been bourbon.
It was rye. Was it? Did it look like that? Was it the purple
Could have
maple,
been.
was it? Yeah. So
It was absolutely gorgeous. It surprised the pair of us went, this is really a bit different. It's like very, very, very strong in terms of taste, but lovely, lush tastes.
Yeah, so so that was the other thing, is that we knew we were going to produce young whiskey. So, but we want to produce excellent whiskey at a young age. So how do you do that? And again, in broad terms, you need complexity, depth, and balance. That's what you need to create. And with this one, Duncana, it was matured in ex-rye casks, so like bourbon, so North American oak, Quercus alba, but with American rye whiskey in it. And the reason we use rye whiskey over bourbon, the reason we choose that is that rye's got this kind of peppery, spicy note to it. So you still get the vanilla and the butterscotch that you would using the Quercus alba, an ex-bourbon, but then you get this extra layer, this little bit of complexity that's the pepperiness from the rye. And then as a second maturation, so we vat the cask together, and then we put that vatting into Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez quarter cask. So the rye barrels are 190 litres, and quarter cask 125, so it's slightly smaller. It's had Oloroso, which is a very dry, nutty sherry, and Pedro Jimenez, which is a very syrupy, sweet, almost raisiny sherry. And so they're matured on second maturation, and then it's vatted back together again, and you can see, the colour that you get from that as well. And as you say, it's quite rich. There's a lot of depth in it.
Just describe the colour for people listening.
Well, for people listening, that's
it's caramelly, isn't it? It's quite a dark whiskey.
It's quite dark, yeah. I mean, I would say that it's a kind of golden brown. Would that be fair? Yeah. So it's more the colour of an Oloroso cherry, that kind of or golden brown colour.
Like many distilleries, the kind of the spirit is there. Where do you then take the spirit to make the magic happen?
So after distillation, so we mature everything on Raasay. In fact, we do everything on Raasay. So we've got our own well on site. The well goes down 60 metres below the distillery, and I'll come back onto it. But that's why the bottle looks like that, because we want to talk about the geology and how that affects the water. And we use that water for mashing, fermentation. We use it for cooling, but most importantly, we use it for cask reduction, and we use it for bottling. And then for the Draam, our signature single malt, it then goes into 3 different cask types. So it goes into ex-rye cask, Chinkapin oak cask, and ex-Bordeaux red wine. And we do 6 months of plain malted barley and 6 months of peated malted barley. So essentially you have 6 casks. So we talk about our 6-cask recipe in this here. So you've got peated in these 3 casks and unpeated in these 3 casks, and then all goes down to our warehouses, which are just behind Inverash on Raasay, so it's about a mile from the distillery. And
a wee bit southeast.
South,
South.
it's south towards the village. So if you went out the distillery and turned left, and when the road forks, keep left, turn right, you're there. So it's about a mile. So everything's matured on Raasay, and then after maturation we bring it back up, we vat it, as I said before, and then we bottle it on Raasay as well. So the bottling's just, you maybe saw the warehouse just behind the distillery, so it's up the hill a wee bit. So that's where it's all bottled.
I'm too old to walk up these hills. too out of peck. There's a lock up the top, isn't there? You walk up a wee bit, you go, because there's a wee old exchange,
that's
isn't
right,
it? There's
telephone exchange, yeah.
Telephone exchange, you go up. Bizarrely, a friend of mine took me up the west coast. We sailed up from Crewe to Oban. There's an old exchange on the right that was the first transatlantic phone call. Did you know that?
No, I don't know.
Just north of where. Anyway, I interrupted you. So, yeah, you've got the lock up there, and it's stunning.
Yeah. So and that's why the bottle looks like this, because we've got our own well where the distillery sits is Jurassic sandstone, so it's really old rock, but it's permeable like a big sponge. But everything around us is volcanic rock. It's granite and basalt. In fact, the Duncana is the highest point in Raasay, so that's named after the kind of, it looks like an upside down bucket. That's actually basalt. Anyway, when it rains, and it rains quite a lot in Raasay, the water runs off all that volcanic rock and ends up
into your bit,
with lots of minerals. So that's why when we were doing the bottle design, we took modelling clay, pushed it into the rocks. So that's where all this texture comes from. And then some of the
detail,
fossils.
Alasdair, detail.
There you go, and a little fossil here from the sandstone on Raasay, and then we use that clay to make the bottle. A little bit of Raasay in your hand.
That's beautiful. No, I didn't know that until we spoke. Where do you sell? Where are the big markets?
So I think we're in 51 different markets around the world now. Obviously, UK home market's very important. Germany, France, USA, Japan, China, Taiwan's probably the kind of headline ones.
Because I saw when we were there quite a few Americans. Skye. It's funny, isn't it? Because Skye is so busy. Skye, in terms of tourism, for people who don't know, Skye is the famous island which you can now access by a bridge, and it's very full of tourism. Beautiful though it is, they've got their own distilleries. They've got Alasdair, and they've got one other. Have they? Torreveg, and it's beautiful. But Raasay is this little island off to the east, as we said, and it's not so busy, is it? It doesn't get the numbers.
No, I mean, from our point of view, we'd love to get more people on that ferry.
Yeah.
We'd love to get more of the visitors, and I think, it is a bit of a barrier. It's a hurdle. People drive past. The amount of people say to me, "Oh yeah, I drove past Sconsor. Yeah, I saw Raasay." It's like, well, get on the ferry. It's like, it's pretty much early. You can, and all the tours line up with the ferry time. So, you probably only need a couple of hours to come over and do a tour and head back again. So
we met a bloke called Davy who helps out at Raasay, who and my friend Angus knew, and he was saying that. Pardon?
David Croy?
Yeah, he was saying the ferry before we went, there was dolphins jumping around. We missed them, but it's a stunning wee trip. People should try it, shouldn't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've seen the dolphins a few times, obviously, in the last 10 years, but they kind of follow the ferry in, and they're really good. If you're on the ferry, they always tell you. They always announce that the dolphins are alongside. But so David Croy is one of the directors of Raasay House, and he's got a rib, and he takes people on kind of wildlife tours up to Rona, and I was on Raasay one evening. It was a beautiful evening, and I was doing a bit of a film to kind of get the sunset and everything. I could hear the rib coming back, so I filmed the rib coming back in with David. And I saw him at Raasay House for a beer later, and he said, "Oh, you wouldn't say we saw sea eagles, we saw minke whales, we saw dolphins." It was like, shut up. But yeah,
I know, it's gorgeous, and more people should go. What's your kind of, I don't know, what do you think? We've obviously got America and tariffs. We don't know where they're going yet. As you and I speak, there was more detail today about a trade agreement, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
What do you think about the US market? What do you hope?
So, I mean, the US for us. I mean, we're probably still fairly early on in our kind of journey, and in the US we've had a few false starts. To be perfectly honest with you, it's a difficult market, not in terms of the customer. There's definitely people who love single malt Scotch whisky in America. It's more the three-tier system, and I know you've spoken to Chris Custer about this before, but it's like so you have to have an importer, you have to have a distributor, you have to have a retailer. Everybody takes their margin. It's different. Every state has different laws about how alcohol can be sold, and so it's really, it's almost you end up almost with a state to state, and you kind of need all these different elements. So that makes it quite complex. And then, we've had tariffs before in America, and it just, I guess in any market you just want a level playing field, and that's the hardest thing. And where we are, there's some good news in terms of India recently about them reducing the tax from 150 to 75. I mean, it's still high, but it will be, I think, 10 years of 40%. So there's various things happening, and I think you've just always got to, I guess you just got to work hard.
What do you think the biggest potential market is?
I mean, everyone has different view. A lot of people are saying India now, obviously because of that. I think Japan's a really interesting market for us as well. People talk a lot about China, but there's never a golden bullet, is there? There's never, and I think it's very true that different markets like different whiskies. Some markets like France prefer unpeated plain single malts. The Scandinavian markets are mad for peat. So it's really just about, I guess you just got to understand each market.
I love telling the amazing story of Scotland's whisky industry and sharing some positivity about one of the incredible things this country has given the world. Now, if you want to share some positivity too, leave us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to the podcast. It takes you 10 seconds and will help Cask to Glass reach a much, much wider audience. What's your range just now? I mean, forgive me, I haven't had time to look them all up, and there were so many. There were a few in the bar that we had one because we were on the ferry.
Yeah.
What's the range?
So basically everything's about the Draam. So the Draam is Isle of Raasay's signature single malt. That's what we set out to make. This is lightly peated dark fruits. You can see the 6 different casks, the cask 6 recipe that I talked about. So 80% of everything we make, and the cask in the warehouse is about
the Draam.
The Draam.
Lighter colour?
Yes, much lighter, when you compare it to the Duncana. So these are our 2 lines. The Duncana's an annual release, but we're trying to get it so it's available all year round. So these are our 2 main ones, and then we also have a cask strength version of the Draam. So it's, rather than being reduced to 46.5, it's bottled at cask strength. It's kind of up there in the 60s, high 50s, 60s, and that's our 3.
Yeah.
And then we have various special releases. We're working on a couple now that are going to come out this year. So yeah.
Can you say what they are? No.
When does this go out?
It's because that possibly next week.
I can give you a clue. So one is a collaboration with another farm distillery actually that grew some barley for us, and this we've distilled it and it's now matured. So we're doing a bit of a collaboration with them, and then the other one that's coming out is a particular fortified wine, and I was up in Raasay this morning yesterday, and we were going through all of the individual casks that are going to go into that vatting.
Fortified wine.
Yeah, fortified wine. Yeah. So.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I only know one brand, but I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really trying to find. So when we're talking about bourbon casks, and I was saying that you use X-rye casks, it's trying to find a cask with the previous contents that enhance and complement our spirit.
the business, the whiskey business is unique, isn't it? Well, it's maybe not unique, but you've got to get a lot of money together to set things up. And then it takes a while for that money to come back in terms of revenue, doesn't it? How's it going with you guys? Pardon?
I'm really glad Bill's not in this call, but yes, you absolutely.
This is Bill Dobbie,
Yeah.
a serial entrepreneur.
Yes, yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, joking apart, there's the obvious big capital cost of building a distillery. There's the running costs. Everything from the barley, yeast, casks. The fuel involved. The staff costs, and you've got all of that for at least 3 years before you can even call it whiskey. And then there's the building the brand, to be something that people recognise. So, yeah, it's a long-term investment.
What would make it easier? I'm just wondering, I've said before that you can be in Shanghai, and somebody's got a bottle of whiskey that's theirs.
Yeah.
It's a bottle of Scotch whiskey, and they leave it there, and they come back week after week for their bottle of Scotch whiskey.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, how you make that whole thing work in terms of selling. How do you get the marketing together? How do you get the right people to sell in the right places?
So I guess the honest reality of it is that we can shout as loudly as we can, and we can spend lots of money in marketing, which we do quite rightly. But when you get a third party referral, so if someone says to you, John, actually I had this great whiskey and it's an amazing place, and you should try this because, and then they tell the story of Raasay or wherever it is. That's the most powerful thing. So I guess what we're trying to do is that we're trying to build that storytelling, that kind of, and that's one of the real benefits of having rooms. When people stay on Raasay, they come and stay at the distillery, they go away. Hopefully they go away as ambassadors of Raasay. And as you've seen yourself, there's people
I loved it.
all over the world.
I mean, I cannot stress how much I loved it. I can't tell you how much we loved Skye, and then I'd never been on Raasay. As I said, I was stunned. We went for the walk up to, what's it called, Failure Hill or something, or
Temptation.
Same thing.
It's a great name, isn't it?
It's a tough old walk, and you then come back down via the distillery. For people who've not been there, it's beautiful.
I mean, the views, it's not very high, Temptation Hill,
no.
But the views you get, it's a 180. So looking all the way down, you can see the red Coolin, the black Coolin, the Totnes Ridge. You're looking up towards the outer Hebridean and Paris and Lewis. It's absolutely worth going up there. And I went up last night just as the sun was going down and
beautiful.
Got some great pictures. It's lovely.
I was going to ask you, what would make it easier for you?
I mean, I think it is exactly that. What I was saying is that just getting that third party, people telling the story, third party recommendations, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we're trying to create by doing tastings and going around the world. But it's when other people say, do you know what, or someone told me this, or I recommend it. That definitely helps.
Where do you think, when people talk about a journey, where do you think you are in the history of Raasay whiskey, and where do you hope to be? Where do you hope to get to?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're very early in our journey. So we started distilling in 2017. So another couple of years before we've even got 10-year-old casks. And that's something we want to do. We want to have older whiskey. And clearly we're trying to build that brand, and it can take 10 years to build a brand,
Wow.
So, and I think it's very much a family legacy for Bill and his son William, and I think that's what it's all about. It's about building Raasay and R&B distillers to hopefully become a leading new wave spirits. Something that's really good.
I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been very kind of you. I mean, we've both had a long day today, haven't we? You've driven back, and I, for reasons I can't go into, I was on a program that just extended quite a bit. But it's worth it. That drive, again, for people who've not seen it, the whole drive up the west coast of Scotland, when you get to Fort William and then you head west, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? It's just, it's unbelievable.
No, it's a real adventure, and I think we've also got the Hebridean Whisky Trail, so the likes of Torreveg, Talisker, ourselves, Harris Distillery, Juna, the newer distilleries in North Uist and Benbecula. I mean, it's all about trying to create, just draw people in. It's not just about one distillery. It's like come and see all of it, because it is just a beautiful part of the world.
So before you go, in a word or two, how would you describe Raasay and Raasay whiskey to people who've never heard? There would be people who've never heard of it. People will never have heard of Talisker. They won't have heard of Highland Park. Lots of people. How would you sum up Raasay and Raasay whiskey?
The Raasay whiskey, lightly peated with dark fruits, as I say, it's a very approachable, easy drinking whiskey. And Raasay is a rugged, windswept island off an island, and it's an adventure to get there. But once you're there, you can put your feet up, and the views of Skye. We've got the hashtag best distillery view. I'm sure that's up for debate, but if you're sitting there looking back at Skye, it is quite something.
Great to talk to you, Alasdair. Thank you.